Hello again, Year 4, and welcome back to Week 3's Maths lessons. Today is Thursday the 7th of May, and our learning objective today is I can tell time to the nearest minute. So yesterday we were looking at telling time at 5-minute intervals, but today we're going to be a little bit more specific. So let's see what we mean by telling time to the nearest minute. We know that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, and on a clock face we can see this with our 5-minute interval big lines, but also with some smaller lines in between to represent the individual minutes. So you can count in a clockwise direction, starting at the o'clock position and go all the way around, and you'll notice that there are 60 individual minutes in that hour. Imagine that your clock is a bendy number line, and if you unroll your number line and straighten it out, you'll notice that it goes from 0 to 12, which represents the 12 hours on the clock face, and underneath that is our 5-minute intervals, but you can also see the little lines in between where you can count the individual minutes, so there are 60 lines in total. Now I've added hands to my clock. So my hour hand has just travelled past the 9, and you can see this represented on my number line below as well. And my minute hand has just travelled to the 4 minutes past position on my clock, which I've also popped on my number line below. As you can see, it's not quite reached that 5-minute interval. So the time is 4 minutes past 9. So when we're telling time to the nearest minute, we can simply count how many minutes past the hour it is using our minute hand. So here, my minute hand has travelled to the 7 minutes past position, because it's 2 minutes past that 5-minute interval. And my hour hand has just travelled past the 8, so it is 7 minutes past 8. However, to make things a bit tricky, not all clock faces have those 60 minutes written on the outside. So instead, that's why there's little lines in between all of our 5-minute intervals to represent those individual minutes. So, to actually work out the time to the nearest minute, we need to use our knowledge of the 5-minute intervals to count how many minutes past it is. Now, I'm going to use my knowledge of those 5-minute intervals, because otherwise it would be quite tricky and quite fiddly trying to count all of those individual lines all the way around the outside. Let's look at this clock. Thinking about our minute hand, I know that if I count in 5-minute intervals, so starting at o'clock, I'm going to jump around 5, 10, 15, 20, and I'll stop at the 4 because that's near where the hand is. But 1 minute after that, so you see the minute hand has moved just past the 4, that would be 21 minutes past. So the time here is 21 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at a practice question. How many minutes is it past the hour? Pause the video now to have a think and answer this question. So the answer is it is 11 minutes past the hour, and you can see this because the minute hand has travelled 1 minute past the 10 past position, and 10 add 1 more is 11. Here's another practice question for you to do. Pause the video now until you've got your answer. So the time here is 28 minutes past. You can see that the minute hand has travelled past the 25 past position, and it's also moved on another 3 little lines, so it would be 25, 26, 27, 28. Here's a puzzler. So, how do we tell the time when the minute hand is on the left-hand side of the clock, which we usually use as the minutes to side of the clock? Have a look at this clock here, and try and work out what the time might be. Pause the video until you've had a think. So we can either say how many minutes past the hour it has been, or we can say how many minutes there are until it will be the next hour. So if you look at the clock here, it is 54 minutes past 2, because since 2 o'clock there have been 54 minutes and our minute hand has gone all the way around the outside of the clock and it's reached its position there, and that's 54 minutes. Or we could also say it is 6 minutes to 3, because there are 6 minutes left of the hour until it will reach 3 o'clock. Let's have a look at another example. On this clock, we can say it is 44 minutes past 12, because since 12 o'clock, our minute hand has travelled all the way around the outside and has reached 44. Or we could also say it is 16 minutes to 1, because if you look, there are 16 minutes left of that hour, and once those 16 minutes have ticked on, then our minute hand will have reached 1 o'clock. So remember, it's something to 1, because that's going to be the next hour. So it's 16 minutes to 1. Let's now do some practice ones. So you've got 2 different clocks here. You've got some sentence stems to help you underneath. So work out now what the time is on both of these clocks. Pause the video whilst you do this. So your answers here. Remember, for each clock there are 2 different ways that you could say the time. So looking at the left clock, we can say it is 46 minutes past 6, or we could say it is 14 minutes to 7. On the right hand clock, it is 52 minutes past 2, or we could also say it is 8 minutes to 3. Now, still looking at that right hand clock, just want to check to make sure that you're not counting all of those individual minutes going around the outside, because that will have taken you a long time. So we can count in our 5-minute intervals, starting at 0 o'clock and going 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and that will have got you to the 10. But our minute hand has gone 2 minutes past that, which is how we know it's 52 minutes past. Now, some of you might have noticed something about the numbers here. 52 minutes and 8 minutes. Well, that makes 60 minutes. And that's because 52 minutes have passed since 2 o'clock, but there are 8 minutes left of that hour. So it's a good way of checking to make sure you've got the time right, because the minutes past and the minutes to the next hour should equal 60. Okay, so one more quick practice question for you to do. Pause the video now until you have worked out which of these is the correct answer. The clock here is showing 1 minute to 11. Now, I think the other answers were trying to trick you a bit. 5 minutes to 12 would be if the hands were switched around. So make sure you know that the longer hand is the minute hand and the shorter hand is the hour hand. And it's not 1 minute to 12, because again, our hour hand is pointing to just before the 11. So it's 1 minute until it reaches 11 o'clock. Right, we're nearly there. One last thing before we finish. You might have noticed that some clocks look a bit different because they've got Roman numerals instead of numbers. So don't find this scary, because it's just exactly the same. We tell the time in the same way. It's just that the numbers are now Roman numerals. Okay, so it might make it a little bit more confusing to tell what hour it is, but you have to remember that each of those ones is counting up in 1. So remember, the one that looks like an eye is 1, the one that looks like 2 eyes is 2, and it carries on all the way up to the XII, which is a 12. Now you're ready for your task for today. Again, you have 2 different worksheets to try, and there are answer sheets for both for once you've finished. If you are finding it a little bit tricky or you get stuck, just rewatch the video or ask a grown-up for help. Now, just a quick notice, there won't be a video tomorrow because it's a bank holiday, but you should still try, if you can, to practice telling the time, and that would be really, really amazing if you did. Because telling the time is quite a tricky thing to do, but the more often you practice, the easier it will become. Well done for persevering with these videos this week. Great job and have a lovely weekend. Bye from me.